Quarterbacks are going earlier than ever in fantasy football drafts. Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen. If you want access to them on most sites, they're going in round 2. And while we love these quarterbacks, the trade-offs are sky high. You have to pass on premium players at positions that are in high demand. Depending on where you draft, that could mean names like CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, Tony Pollard, and Ramondre Stevenson will not be on your fantasy teams in 2023 if you take a quarterback in round 2. Fortunately, there are 3 high upside quarterbacks that we can take at ranges in the draft that make a lot more sense because the trade-offs are much lower. And that's why in 2023, my favorite strategy is waiting until round 5 or later to target my quarterback. So the first quarterback we want to look at is Justin Fields, who goes in round 5. Fields has already shown us that he is a dual threat alien with league-winning upside. Fields averaged 20.6 points per game last season, thanks to 1,143 yards rushing and 8 rushing touchdowns. There are only 4 instances of quarterbacks averaging 10-plus rushing attempts per game since 2011, and those are Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson has done it twice. And guess what? Those players have averaged 24.4 points per game. And guess what? I don't see that slowing down in 2023. He was the number 1 scrambling quarterback in the league last year at 16%, and he also handled 20% of the Bears' design running plays, which was 3rd only behind Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts. I know, you're probably thinking, that's all well and good, Dwayne, but what about the passing game? When we talk about Justin Fields, he averaged only 149 yards per game last year, by far the worst in the NFL. Well, let me introduce to you DJ Moore. This was a huge move for the Bears this offseason, and that gives us hope. We also get Darnell Mooney back, who was injured in week 12 of 2022. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what if Fields makes similar strides in year 3 like we saw from Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen once those teams upgraded their offensive weapons? If he even takes a slight step forward, we could be talking about a QB1 overall finish. And believe me, the list of guys that we can say have that kind of upside is very short. So while your league mates are going to be bypassing wide receivers and running backs in round 2 that have potential league-winning upside to get their quarterback, you're going to be taking Justin Fields, a top 6 option with QB1 overall upside at a much better trade-off. So we're talking about a range in drafts where wide receivers like Terry McLaurin are going. And while we like McLaurin, he's a talented player, there are a lot of questions. Do we really believe in Sam Howell? What about Jahan Dotson? Is he going to earn more targets? What about Curtis Samuel? He was a big deal early last year. So when we look at Fields, this is a player that's going to be guaranteed touches, and he controls his own destiny. So now let's turn our attention to the second quarterback that I want to discuss with you, and that is Justin Herbert, a player that's already shown us how good he is, averaging 22.7 points per game in each of his first 2 seasons. Now that dropped off last year down to 17.3 points per game, and that has some fantasy drafters feeling leery about clicking on his name. It is true that Herbert's yards per attempt and his average depth of target hit career lows. However, there are good reasons for that. First, Herbert wasn't 100%. He picked up a rib injury in week 2 against the Chiefs, and then after the season, he had surgery to repair his labrum. Secondly, the Chargers were not healthy. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams only played 4 full games together last season. We should expect a major bounce back season for Herbert in terms of yards per attempt this year, with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams healthy, and they also added Quentin Johnston in round 1 of the NFL draft. And oh yeah, they brought over that guy from the Cowboys, Kellen Moore, who is a pass-happy offensive coordinator. And if you don't want to take my word for it, that's okay, but you can turn your attention to odds makers over at Superbook. They have the Chargers projected as the 5th most improved offense and they also rank number 5 overall with 24.6 points per game. Herbert has top 3 quarterback upside. He is a discounted version of Joe Burrow, who goes 2 rounds earlier, and potentially even Patrick Mahomes, who we talked about, goes in round 2. So similarly to Justin Fields, as your league mates wander through a complete minefield in round 5 at some of the skill positions, you can lock in a quarterback that we feel great about with proven pedigree and an offense that we love. And that brings us to our final candidate at quarterback, and that is Deshaun Watson. He is coming off the board in round 7 of fantasy drafts as the QB 10. I understand Watson was absolutely atrocious last year, averaging 15.1 fantasy points per game. However, there are a lot of reasons that I don't think he can be anywhere near as bad in 2023. Outside of last season, Watson has averaged over 21.5 points per game every year of his career, and he's only going to be 28 years old. It's very, very rare to see a quarterback as good as he has been in their prime just completely fall off a cliff. The reality is Watson is one of a few options that gives you upside for 5,000 yards passing as well as 450 yards rushing. In 2020, he threw for 4,823 yards and ran for 444 in 16 games. Additionally, we have heard rumors that the Browns' offense under Kevin Stefanski is going to change to try and maximize Watson. Gone are the years of a run-heavy approach, and guess what? Really, all of the moves this offseason line up with that narrative. Data point number 1, they go out and trade for Elijah Moore. Data point number 2, they don't have much draft capital. They use their first pick on Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee. And finally, in a running back room that used to be chock full with names behind Nick Chubb, we have Kareem Hunt gone and we have Dearness Johnson gone. It's just Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford. Watson has been an amazingly efficient quarterback over his career. And if he just approaches his career averages, and let's say this Browns offense does open up and drop back to pass, let's say 62% of the time, he would project for 22.7 fantasy points per game. Watson is my most drafted quarterback for all of these reasons. In fact, in 115 drafts, I know, I'm sick. I actually have done 115 drafts. He's on 20% of my teams.